Hey tax students, this is your teacher Roy with a video to show you the tax software we're going to be using this semester. Eventually off to the side of our Laulima class overview page, you'll see this tool called ProConnect Tax Online. And if you click on it, a new window or tab should open up in your browser. Make sure the address, the URL address says taxeducation.intuit.com. If you don't see this tax education subdomain name, you're probably in the professional site, yeah, that charges if you prepare tax returns. Here in this educational site, preparing sample tax returns is a free service we get. The name of the company we're dealing with is called Intuit, and a popular product they make is called QuickBooks. So maybe eventually you'll be taking the QuickBooks class, or if you've taken the QuickBooks class, you may have an account already that you could possibly use. If it doesn't work, or for new users of Intuit for this educational site, what you need to do is click on this Create an Account link here at the bottom and go ahead and use your hawaii.edu email address. That's going to be the name you'll use when you log in. And I would recommend if you have a phone that can accept text messages, go ahead and enter your phone for what we call multi-factor authentication when you log in. Go ahead and make up a password. And when you move on to the next screen, let me just show you this screen here. So make sure you enter your first and last name, your real first and last name. The phone number here again, if you enter it, this is where you can enter or receive through text messages a confirmation multi-factor code when you log in each time into this software. Go ahead and make up a company name over here that will be your company that will prepare tax returns. In this next line, make sure you choose this previous tax software. Make sure you choose the option student training. I think some of my students in another class had put something else and they got into the professional site by mistake. Yeah, but make sure you say student training here. And then this last two blanks, just choose the smallest number possible of tax returns you'll prepare or have prepared. I don't think it really matters. Yeah, but again, make sure this box here says student training. So let me go back and log in. So I already have my account here. Oh, let me try bring up my memorized passwords here. Okay, my browser memorizes my username and password here, so I'll just log in. So here's the opening screen for ProConnect Tax Online, this welcome screen. Really this tab over here. You can see various tabs here. And we'll be just using two of these tabs. One to set up the client or pick a client, and one to pick the return for that client. Eventually you'll come down here at the very end, this settings button, where you can log out of the software. So let's take a look at the different clients I have. So here you can see the name of the clients. And for each client, I probably have set up one or two tax returns. So let's use the Emily and David Chen tax return that you're going to be working on and submitting using this ProConnect Tax Online. You've already prepared it using the fillable PDF files, yeah? And eventually I'll show you the printout that you need to come out with when using this software for the Chen return. So the first step is to click on this Clients tab and set up the Chen as a client. So to start a new client, up here in the upper right hand corner is the Add Client button. So let's put Emily first here as the taxpayer. To move from field to field, it's easier to use the Tab key. And I'll just make up a date that keeps her under 65. Let's try 1980. And then the tax ID number. Some tax software will actually screen the Social Security numbers eliminating ones that are not acceptable or not possible. I don't think this ProConnect Tax Online actually screens the ID number. So just make one up. You don't need to fill in the email. We're not going to contact Emily with any email. And then make up an address. I'll use Honolulu, Hawaii, and then our campus zip code 96816. Okay, don't fill in any of these phone numbers for Emily. You notice David's not cannot be entered here as a client. So when setting up the client, the person that you're actually going to contact probably should be here with their email address and with their phone numbers. I'm going to save Emily as a client. So now she should show up on my list here. Looks like it's at the bottom. You can always probably sort, yeah, by clicking on the heading at the top, alphabetically or numerically. So let's create a tax return for Emily, either clicking on this link here or this tax return button here. I'll click on tax returns, and you can see all the tax returns I prepared already for the year 2019. Right now, ProConnect Tax Online allows you to prepare either 2019 or 2018, and eventually there'll be a 2020 link here if you stick around long enough. Let's see. Here's my previous year, 2018. Again, here's 2019. So let's prepare a 2019 return for Emily. You notice it's not here. If you had saved Emily's return and want to continue with it, you can just click on the return name over here. But because we don't have a one for the Chens, let's go ahead and click on this blue button here in the upper right hand corner for Create Tax Return. Then we need to pick the client in this drop down list, here Emily. And you can see the information that we've already entered. It's going to be a individual return versus a corporate or partnership or S corporate return will maybe prepare next semester in accounting 137. And again, we can change the year of the return here. I'm going to rename the return, not the client, yeah, but Emily and David. And let me actually put the year so I can see the year also within the name of the return. Okay, Chen, Emily, and David dash 219. Makes it easier to identify just by reading it. Who's the client? Maybe the spouse and the year. So down here in the lower right hand corner, I click on Save. And I'm in the return right now. You can see the tools here. Again, we're in the tax return, and there's different tabs up here. Depending upon which step you're in, the options here on the right hand side may change. So let's say I want to go back to the tax return link here. So again, here's all the different tax returns, including the new one that I had already renamed for the Chens. And if I click on it, I'm back into the return again. Here I'm already on the next step. Let me go back to the first step here called Profile. So what we're doing is preparing a federal return. It's checked off here. And I think it's going to prepare automatically a Hawaii return because that's the address I had entered for the client. Now, if you need to prepare another state return, I can pick one here off of the list. Yeah. But Hawaii should be default. And I can file an extension if I needed to, and possibly have estimated tax payments during the year set up for them. Okay, let's go to Input. Well, here you can see a list of menus. Yeah, I'm going to collapse this menu here. So right now I'm in this Input menu, and these are the different sections of the Input return menu. If I click on General, you can see the topics or subtopics over here. Right now I'm on the topic called Client Information. So this is for the Chens. We're saying they're a Hawaii resident, so automatically the Hawaii return is going to be prepared. Even though the Hawaii return will be prepared, I'm not going to look at least for the um, tax returns we prepare initially at the start of this semester. Maybe at the end have one that I'm going to purposely make different than the federal and have you turn it in. They're a resident of Hawaii for the full year. The filing status, right now that it's defaulting to single, but we know the Chins are married filing joint. So that opened up a couple more lines probably down here for David, yeah? But here Emily is already set up because we've entered her information when we created the client. Let's enter her occupation. Again, you make one up or use the one you had done in the previous return. And let's see. She's still with us here, so remember you can prepare a tax return for the last return for a decedent, yeah, that died during the year, and you would have to enter the date of death. Our taxpayer is not a dependent, so you can leave this blank or affirmatively say that it doesn't apply. Okay, that will default anyway, yeah, it won't apply. So let's enter the spouse's name, David, last name Chen. You could change it if it's different. And then social security number, again, make sure you at least make one up, otherwise it's not going to process, yeah? And David is a student. And again, I'll make up a date that he's reasonably under 65 years old. Okay, and again, he's not a dependent. If he were a dependent, then you probably cannot file a joint return, yeah? So we got the address already for the Chins. We don't need any phone numbers. We're not going to contact them. And let's see. Typically, you always got to make sure when it's a first-time client, you got to confirm information from them, yeah? By looking at their social security cards or looking at their driver's license, making sure they say who they are. I'll skip that, yeah? For this prepare, automatically you'll show up at the bottom of page 2 of the 1040 as the prepare. So don't make any changes there, yeah? And your firm company name will show up. Okay, so Hawaii information we don't need to enter. Again, all of this is in this input section of the general client information. So let's go ahead and enter the daughters, the 3 daughters as dependents here. So this whole screen is just for one dependent, and eventually you'll see the names appear for different tabs for each dependent. So let's put in the first dependent. Again, just make up a name. Let's see, April, Chen, and one of them is 5, yeah? So again, I'll pick a month and day in the middle of the year. So 5 would be 2014. That's the youngest daughter. And then social security number, let's make it up. And then in this drop-down list, you can pick the relationship to the taxpayer, or just typing in the first letter, it automatically will fill in the word that matches. And the dependents live with the taxpayers the whole year, 12 months. Here it's a child that live with the taxpayer versus other types of dependent relationships. Earned income credit, we're going to claim it, yeah? But if you remember that previous return, was it Bennett? Bennett didn't qualify for claiming the son. So if that was the case, if we were doing Jack Bennett's return, we would say probably suppress here, okay? Not claim the earned income credit. But here automatically we're going to claim it. And we're going to automatically claim that child tax credit. Okay, and then all of these credits, yeah, claimed by us, yeah, the taxpayer. I think that's all we need here. So we got the first dependent, April. So when we need another, usually there's tabs up here, yeah? So I click on this plus to add another tab. So here's the next daughter. And I'll make her the one that's 10 years old. So let's see, 2019, that's 2009. Again, I'm making up a social security number. Daughter, 12 months, and all of this is default to what I want here. Next daughter. Okay, so all three daughters, each tab here. If you want to delete one, you see the X next to the tab. Yeah, you can remove them. Again, I'm in this input area, the general section, the dependent subsection. I don't think I need anything more in this general section. So let's go ahead and enter their income already. Okay, so income tab, and here's all the different categories of income like we had learned back in chapter 3. So wages is the most common here at the top. And again, if I want to enter more than one W2, I would have more than one tab up here. So this whole screen is all for one W2 if needed, yeah? But we're not going to use everything here. We're not given the whole W2, but you still try to fill in as much as possible. Okay, so let's see. Employer information. The ID number is important, yeah, but I'm not going to fill it in. Just to keep track of it, I'm going to enter the company name here. So we'll call this ABC School, where Emily works as a teacher. I'm going to skip the address, but again, you should fill in based upon what you see on the W-2 form that's not given to us. Now tell me, should I check off this as the spouse's W-2? Now who's the spouse here? Is it Emily or David? It depends on the order. Yeah, you had entered him. Remember we set up Emily as the taxpayer. So the spouse here would be David, and this is not David's information. It's Emily, so I leave it unchecked. We're told that Emily's salary is $39,850, and withholding of federal taxes is zero. Notice that it fills in all the other so-called FICA taxes, Social Security and Medicare, yeah? If this is not correct, you would change it. It's not going to matter in our tax return, but probably this would be the most common situation. Whatever you enter up here as the gross wages will fill down here and calculate the withheld Social Security and Medicare taxes automatically for you. Hawaii information should probably be down here also, but it's just going to pick up whatever that's up here, including probably zero taxes withheld for Hawaii. Okay, I'm done with this W-2, even though I should probably fill in if I do have the information for address and employer ID number. If you have another W-2, you would click on this plus button to add another tab. Again, making sure you have the correct taxpayer or spouse being identified for that W-2. Now, the only other income we're told that the Chens have is interest income, probably the second most popular type of income. So if I click on this button here, instead of different tabs up here, you have one row for each different source of interest income. So let's say that this interest income is coming from Bank of Hawaii. Just make up a name, yeah, even though we didn't do so in the previous fillable PDF file. It wouldn't matter here whether the account is in the taxpayer or spouse's or joint name because everything is going to be combined together in one tax return. So we're saying the interest here in the third column, we're giving it to be $800. Now, if you have more information to enter than the columns you see here, you would click on this details button here at the end of the row. Now this whole screen is just for that Bank of Hawaii interest, typically reported to the taxpayer on a Form 1099. Again, I can make more detailed entries here, which we don't need for this problem. Now to go back to that listing we saw, here, this button, back to quick entry. So again, you can see this one row is for one source of interest. Now another row would be for another source of interest. I think that's the only income they have. So let's take a look at the tax forms already. So when you're in this input return step, you should see this preview form button off to the right side. And it opens up a smaller window that you can expand that shows the whole tax return, including stuff like let me maximize it here. Well, let's just fill up this screen here. Let's try this again. I don't want two copies of this. So here's a cover letter. Let's jump to the 1040 form. So it fills in all of the names, addresses, the dependents, the income. Looks like it's calculating down correctly for the standard deduction, and it's figuring out the tax on the next page. I didn't enter information yet for the dependent care credit, so I don't see it over here. Okay, I don't see the form 2441. There is that Schedule EIC already completed. And here is the additional child tax credit. Here's a professional form that you would fill in if you're the paid preparer. Yeah, getting paid to prepare this return. You can ignore this form, yeah? So I need to fill in information for the dependent care credit. So let me close this window. You can put it off to the side and look at it later on again. So I'm going to go out of this income section and down into the credit section. So here's some of the credits we learned in chapter 2. And here at the very top is the one I want to work on, dependent care credit. It looks like there's two different input screens, one for entering the children and one for entering the provider. So let's take a look at the children's screen. So you're going to have one tab up here for each child being taken care of. I mentioned in the previous exercise, we can just assume 2 kids. Yeah, that would be the maximum. So let's enter the child. And here now, because we've already entered it in a previous screen, we can pick it from the drop-down list. So let's say it's April. And the only other thing I need to enter is how much was paid for her. And I mentioned in the previous instructions, let's pick up half of the total, yeah? So that's going to be $1,250. Is that right? Yeah, and if it's the taxpayer being taken care of or the spouse, we would have to say so over here. Okay, so let's enter the other child. So the plus button here to add another tab, and let's pick May. And again, the balance of the 1,250 again. So total is that 2,500 given to us. And let's enter now who's taking care of the kids. This is really the first part of that form 2441. So let's call this ABC Daycare. And they're on 123 Main Street in Honolulu, Hawaii, 96816. And we should enter an ID number. We'll say the ID number is the employer ID number. And I just can fill it up with whatever numbers. Typically in Hawaii, the first 2 digits is 99. That's the most common in Hawaii. Then 7 more digits after that. If you're claiming the Hawaii credit, you have to put down the provider's Hawaii ID number, the general excise tax number over here. And let's see, I think I need to enter how much they were paid. In the previous screen, we entered how much was paid for each child, yeah? So total amount paid here in this box. Again, that was 2,500. I'm purposely going to make a mistake here or leave out something, yeah? So let's take a look at the tax form again. So I'm going to refresh my tax form. Here I'm going to bring it into my screen here. And I still don't see that 2441 form. In fact, on this 1040 form, all of this credit here in line 13B is the additional, no, it's the child tax credit, and none of it is the dependent care credit. So if you remember, there was a number we made up for David. Remember, he had to have earned income or work income, but because he's a student, it's not automatically picking up that make-believe income. So whenever you're on a screen, let's see, I don't see it here. Let's go back to this child and independent screen. Sometimes besides what you see up here and to the left and the tabs, there may be other commands like this one right here, general information. So if I click on it, another screen opens up asking for the earned income. We already know the taxpayer Emily, we've entered that on the W2 screen, but nothing was entered for David. So let's enter his make-believe income. He was a student for 12 months, and I'm going to multiply that. I can actually use this box as a calculator, yeah? 12 asterisk. And how much do we enter per month? Not 250, right? 250 was for one child. For two or more, it's 500. So when I enter, you can see the 6,000 here. So now if I refresh let's bring it on my screen here, this preview form, and use this refresh button. And we look for the 2441 form here, calculating out this credit that carries over to this Schedule 3. And this 550, you don't see it here on the 1040 form, but it's being added to this smaller child tax credit to get this total non-refundable credit. Okay, so let's move on to the next step. Okay, I'm still in this input procedure. Let's do a check return. Just like we saw for the preview, you can see a summary here of the federal and then the state if you want to do a state. Well, here's the forms that we've seen before for federal or Hawaii. I would recommend taking a look at this critical diagnostic link here, and it tells you of possible mistakes. We can ignore anything regarding electronic filing. Our student version doesn't allow us to electronic filing, yeah? So I can just say, well, it doesn't allow me to ignore. Let's see, verify. Again, due diligence, this is for professionals, so let's ignore that, yeah? But in real life, if you're a paid professional, you gotta go through a checklist on this form 8867. Coronavirus relief. The laws have changed during the year because of the coronavirus situation, yeah? It doesn't matter in our case, we don't have anything that applies, but let me check it off anyway here. It's not going to change the tax. And then I would refresh, and if anything, here I can see there's one less diagnostic message. Paid prepare, asking for what we call a paid prepare tax ID number. If you're a professional preparer, you gotta register with the IRS and get this number and enter it into the tax system, which we are not going to do for us, yeah? And possibly your social security number or PIN again. W2, it's telling us we're missing the employer ID number. This is the input screen, yeah? We entered this name and we didn't enter the address, which I think is the next diagnostic message. Again, if you have the W2, you gotta fill this in, which we don't have, yeah? Paid prepare information, we'll let it default to whatever it's going to be doing. This critical diagnostics, you gotta clear it if you're going to do e-filing, which we're not doing, yeah? You cannot have any of this left over. Okay. And then the taxpayers will actually sign off, giving us permission. That's called their PIN number, yeah? We don't have a third-party designee to receive information from the IRS. Hawaii, we're going to ignore. First-person organization. Okay, that's Hawaii. Okay, so I don't think I need to change anything here. So let's take a look at the return, the file that you're going to be turning in. So here in this last step called file return, if we were e-filing, if it were possible, you actually would see commands here, buttons to actually turn in the e-file form with the IRS and the state. But what we're going to do only is to create a PDF, one file only, yeah? And you're going to review it and turn this in. So create PDF. And we're going to open it, download and open it. So here is the screen that shows you the whole tax return, including cover letter. Now compare this to your old previous tax return, and I'll give you also this same document to compare with, yeah? I think this is correct. And your name should be down here, yeah, as the preparer, here at the bottom of the second page. Let's take a look at the other forms. So again, here's the dependent care credit coming from Form 2441. Now let's go over the whole 1040 here. Filing status is joint. Here's Emily. You could put David first, yeah, and then Emily, but you got to be consistent in your data entry. Their address, social security numbers, the dependent information, all of them qualify for the child tax credit because they're under 17. Emily's wages, their interest income, total income, AGI, standard deduction, taxable income that's looked up automatically on the tax table to give you the tax for the whole year. And here is the child tax credit combined with the dependent care credit to zero out the tax. That's why Emily doesn't have any taxes with income taxes withheld on her paycheck, yeah? Because she knows she's going to get back the refundable credits here that are automatically calculated, including the earned income credit and then the rest of the additional child tax credit. If she wants this to get refunded directly to her bank account, you need to fill in the direct deposit information, which we weren't given. So a check will be mailed to them. So here is the child and dependent care credit, including that $6,000 we had entered for David's make-believe income. Again, if you didn't enter that $6,000, the form wouldn't be generated here, yeah? So earned income credit schedule EIC only identifies the 3 children. It doesn't do the calculations, which we'll see in a worksheet at the end of this file. Additional child tax credit. So here's the maximum, 3 kids times $2,000 each. Here's how much of it was used for the child tax credit and the leftover for possible additional child tax credit. But the maximum refundable per child is $1,400, yeah, times the 3 kids. So that's less than the amount that's unused in the previous step. So based upon their work income, or really her work income, she gets back all of that 4,200 as refundable credit. If you were a paid professional, you would have to complete this form, really saying that you've double checked, maybe triple checked information. And then worksheets that are not really filed with the return, but just for information purposes, showing you detailed calculations like this child tax credit. Here's the earned income credit calculation. So to do the previous homework assignment with the fillable forms, I gave you the link to the worksheet. Well, here is the worksheet done automatically for you in ProConnect Tax Online. Then again, I won't be looking at the Hawaii form, but all of these forms and schedules are in one file. So you're going to download it. Here's my download button in my Chrome browser, yeah? And I'll just save it to my desktop, yeah? Save it. Okay, so this file now is in my desktop. Now make sure you review it, and then when you're ready, go ahead and upload it into our Lao Lima assignments folder. I'll have eventually again this file for you to compare with, but after the assignment is previous homework assignment is due. Okay, so if you have questions, go ahead and email me. Okay, talk to you later.